Perspective with Chris Johnson.
Episode 4 with the amazing, ultra fantastic, sweet and wonderful Eva Gardner of Pink. Check out some of her music in the Players Pick Podcast playlist on Spotify. We're talking about guitar picks, and because I feel like it's a thing that we don't hear a whole lot about, and I think you have some interesting stuff to tell us. Like, when was the first memory of getting a guitar pick?
Well, my dad, being a bass player, he actually was a bass player that played with a pick. Mostly, he was a pick player. So my early memories were of him, and he always had like 2 or 3 picks in his pocket. Like, he never went anywhere without picks. Like, it was picks and like coins, you know. And he never knew when he was going to sit in anywhere. You know, we'd be at like some bar in Mexico and on a family holiday or whatever, and he'd ask to sit in with a band, and sure enough, he'd get, reach into his pocket, pull out a pick, and get to town. But it was funny too, because he would always show off his pick muscle. He said he had this pick muscle, yeah. So he would like put his on his right. He was right-handed, so on his right thumb and pointer finger, he would just kind of like push those together, and then like this big muscle would form like in the crease of his hand.
He could flex
like,
that.
yeah, he would flex his pick muscle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like he was really proud of this pick muscle.
I've totally never heard that ever from anyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was a thing too, and I was always like, when I first started playing, I was like, I gotta work on my pick muscle, man. Like,
yeah,
I gotta work
Dad's got one, I gotta get one.
Gotta work out the muscles.
Yeah.
So so very early on, I mean, those were my memories, and the picks I always knew of were the ones that he used, which were Dunlops. They were the gray nylon 88s.
Right.
And so that's really how I started. When I started playing with a pick, because that was just, I did what Dad did, and I just kind of followed suit. And the picks that I first used were just like his discard picks, like kind of ones that he didn't want anymore, and there was like a pile of picks. And my favorite one was this shocking pink pick with like etched in black was the name of some music store in Van Nuys or something like that. It was like cool. Charlie's Music with like an 818 number on it.
Right.
And for whatever reason, it was like my favorite pick, and it was the one that like I just always had to make sure I knew where it was.
Was this some sort of premonition, being pink?
Oh, I don't know.
Being your primary
Maybe.
gig? I don't know.
I don't know. I just really remember that one, and of course, like the confetti pick. That was always
the Fender celluloid. Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
It's definitely one of mine too.
So those were like my early picks that I used, and when I got into, I decided that I wanted to, in high school, like take music more seriously, and I went to a performing arts high school called Loxa, and I got in the jazz band there, and I got in as like the little rocker chick, like I didn't really know much about big band music or anything like that, and my first day in jazz band, I get called up to play, and I go up there, and the first thing he says to me is, my jazz band instructor, he goes, "Miss Eva, put down that pick."
Oh, man.
Okay, here we are, getting thrown into the fire. So I remember I had the Fender Confetti pick that day, and I remember putting it on top of the amp behind me, and there it goes, and I kind of sadly looked at it behind me, and from that moment forward, I was like forced to play with my fingers. And interestingly enough, I'm grateful for that moment, because at that very second, he inadvertently made me a more versatile player.
Right.
So I'm grateful for that now. At the time, he was kind of like, oh God, this little...
Maybe a little terrifying.
Rock and roller, like, what you doing playing with a pick. But now I'm grateful for that. And I was just kind of, thrown into the fire, started playing with my fingers. And for the rest of high school, they didn't let me play with a pick. So that was...
Well, and and now you primarily don't use a pick. You have like X amount of songs and X amount of different techniques that you do need a pick for. But
right. I play with my fingers, but it's something that I am grateful that I did start with, because I have that skill. And what a lot of people don't understand is like it's just another tool in the toolkit. It's just another way of getting a different tone or a different sound or a different technique. It's just all part of the same thing. And I've actually gone to I've taught workshops on pick before. I was teaching at a rock and roll summer camp for kids ages 12 to 17. And of course, the first day when everybody gets there, bass players are all slapping, trying to show off their flea chops or whatever. Everyone's just kind of like, all the guitar players like just totally wanking and doing whatever. It's like everyone's just trying to show off their thing,
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the hardest we would split the week off into different days, like different styles, different days. And the day that was like the rock days were easier for the kids. The hardest day was like the reggae day, when it was like when the music was scaled back and was simplified, and it was more about the groove and not the chops. When it was like you're just playing two notes, it's like or even like stir it up or something. And you're just playing that over and over again, locking in with the drummer. The drummer's playing like super simple thing. Guitar plays something super, super simple. And that was the hardest thing for them to do.
Wow.
Was just to
slow down,
put
the space in,
and just groove.
And find that pocket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was very telling. It's like that's something that when kids are learning, that's a big part of what music is finding that feeling. And it's not always about all the notes. So I decided to do a workshop on the pick because it's something they think that I'm grateful that I know. And I thought it'd be good for the kids to know that it's just another skill to have. So I brought in a bunch of picks and gave them all a couple and just showed them played them some examples of players that played with the pick and had them listen to how it sounds different, and then had them just kind of mess with the technique and just how like all the different styles and different sounds you could get. And like the biggest compliment for me was the rest of the week the kids all carried a pick in their pocket.
Oh yeah.
I didn't even say that. I didn't even tell them I didn't even tell them to do that, but I would just notice them kind of pull it out, and
that was the natural course.
Yeah, and that just made me feel really, really happy. It made me feel really like okay, they absorbed it a little bit, which is cool.
It's interesting because I think, from my experience, like a lot of bass players that start out and get like kind of more formal training right off the bat, like from an instructor that says, okay, this is how it goes. A lot of those bass players, I know like 3 or 4 of them around me, they pick up a pick and it's so foreign to them at this point in their playing and their history that, learning as a child in early formative years of your playing, that's just another tool is such a huge thing, I think. It sounds like, because, and especially for you started there and then moved towards the thing. So it was already ingrained in you.
Yeah. You
didn't have to, somebody told you this is the way it has to be, and then you kind of felt weird every time you picked up a pick at that point, right? Like you didn't have to go through that.
Yeah, no. And sadly, I think the pick gets a lot of shit.
It does. On bass, it's like the faux pas.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, no, you play with your fingers.
Like it's not cool or whatever. But I think it's cool when a musical director says, hey, can you play it like this? And I can say yes. So, like depending on what you're going for, being versatile, like being open to trying different things, like doing what needs to be done to make the music sound the way it needs to sound. If I'm playing with an artist and they get like a distorted pick sound on the song, whatever, like I need to mimic that. I need to be able to get that sound for them.
Right.
And if I'm playing in my own band, I'm always messing with like muted palm muting, like pick style stuff or whatever. It's like it's just fun to play with different sounds and different styles.
Did you ever do like the foam underneath the bridge type of thing? Like it's like a Jamerson stuff? Is that what they?
Yeah, and from what I understand, Fender Precisions, there was a time when they actually came with the foam in the bridge.
Oh, really?
And from what I understand, because I went to a guitar shop one time and looked through their vintage gear, and there was a couple of Precisions that still had the foam in there, like this black foam.
Cool.
And I picked it up, and anything you play, you feel like Jamerson.
Wow.
It's the coolest feeling.
That's fun.
But again, that's another sound, another technique.
Another technique, yeah.
Yeah.
Tool in the toolbox. So when you did that, where was the guitar pick class that you did? What was that?
It was it's a summer camp called Soundwall.
Okay.
Up north. And
is it part of the same program that I saw you producing The music?
Different program.
Oh, different program. But is it up in the North
This
Bay?
is up. We were teaching up in the campus of UC Santa Cruz.
Oh, okay.
So it was a summer program. So when the college was out for summer, we would move in, and it was like a sleepaway summer camp. We would stay in the dorms, and so it was like your music teacher and your camp counselor all in one. But it was really fun. Yeah, ages 12 to 17.
It's still one of my favorite memories of just in the last year or two. It was getting to visit you while you were producing music for these troubled youth, up kind of in my area in the Bay Area, and watching you at the soundboard and running the talk back and asking these kids to try a different way and with different feeling or different timing and I think that's like a little teary-eyed moment for me because you're like such a friend to me on top of like being in awe of you as a performer on stage, but like that was such a great thing. So to be reminded that you regularly commit your time to children, to youth that are looking for that, it's just so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so fortunate that I'm able to do that and offer something.
Yeah,
offer something to them.
You see value in it.
Yeah.
And that makes that's I don't know, it's a big deal.
Well, it's so rewarding for me too. It's like it makes me feel good, and to know that they're feeling good or they're gaining just a little bit more confidence or pushing them in a way that they a lot of these girls. I work with a company, Future Youth Records. That's the one that I was working with when you came to the studio.
Okay.
And they work with at-risk youth, and a lot of these girls come in and never thought in a million years they could write a song or write a lyric or be in a professional recording studio and be putting their words to music. And to see that process and to see them come in and freaked out and scared and not thinking that they could do this, and then walking out and they have a song that they wrote. I mean, that's pretty massive. So to be able to facilitate that and help get those moments out of them is pretty special.
And so coming back to the pick thing, right? So you ended up kind of going to the nylon picks that your dad was using, but then I think that they were a little too flimsy for you.
Yeah, so the ones that I ended up liking for myself were the 1mm.
Okay.
Yeah. I do like the gray ones still sometimes. Like dear old dad reminds me of him anyway. But what I ended up really liking for myself was the nylon 1mm, the black ones. That's just what really kind of felt good as far as like the give. They had like a little more give, and I used a lot of different picks over the years. I mean, the Fender heavies, but those don't have a lot of enough give for me. I really like how the nylon feels. Okay. So I've just really settled into those. And then guitar. When I play guitar, also I'm grateful that I have some pick experience, because when I started playing guitar, I already have that feel.
The dexterity.
Yeah, as far as that goes. And of course, that's a different pick as well.
Well, we did glow in the dark for you a while back. So you've got glow in the dark 1mm.
Yes, I can actually see them when I drop them on stage.
Yeah. And how are the custom prints going with? You get to hand those out to fans?
Yeah, they're awesome. Cool. They're so cool. At one part during the Pink show, I didn't know that the security guys were doing this, but we go out on the B stage and I guess it's when the security goes out there, and whatever kids are out there, they hand out picks and sticks. Like the drummer throws out sticks or has some sticks for them, and so the security guys are handing these out to the kids, and I would get these messages on Instagram, and they're like, "Oh my God, my little 5-year-old son he slept with his pick last night in your hand," and I just get these photos, and they would just be so excited. And I was like, "What? Like, how was that happening?" And I didn't know that they were handing them out, but they were, and it meant so much to them just to have a little piece of the show and a little piece of the players that are up there. And my God, it like killed me when I saw that little boy like sleeping with the pick in his hand, and his mom wouldn't let him take it away.
That's amazing.
So those little things go a long way.
I can only imagine, especially being that young and impressionable, with as amazing as the Pink show is.
Yeah.
Holy crap! Like, I still remember. I'm still in awe of the first time I saw the show, which was the Funhouse show in Seattle many years ago.
2008.
Yeah. Yeah, see, that's 10
exactly
years.
10 years
Yeah,
ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember, like, kind of, like, being, like, stoked to see the show because it was something different from what I'd normally go see. And our connection was just blossoming. And then the show started, and I was like, oh, my God, is it okay that I like this? Like, it's really good. Like, really good. And the whole band, as you know. I mean, I'm just... You live with these people on tour, and they're such sweet people. Every time you introduce me to somebody in the band, and the singers are amazing. I love them. I can't remember their names, but
Stacy and Jenny.
Stacy and Jenny, yeah, they're such sweethearts.
Yeah, it's the family. I mean, I've been there going on 12 years, and I'm one of the newest kids in the band.
Wow.
One of the newest members.
Yeah, that's
so,
good.
I mean, you know, she's starts from the top.
Yeah.
Starts from the top. You know, she's
got heart.
She's incredible.
She's got big. She wears it right on the front, you know, and the vocal range. I remember that night too because I think was it Bohemian Rhapsody that was a part of that tour, and then there was there Led Zeppelin?
We did Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
We did Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You.
Yeah. And what was the other cover? Was I think
AC/DC.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
AC/DC.
I remember. I think I at the time my girl at that time, I remember texting her going, oh my God, you made a big mistake not coming. Because she's a singer. And I was just like, you're not going to believe that Bohemian Rhapsody sounds as good as it does right now, you know?
Yeah.
So occasionally I'll try to find that, because I think it's online. Like, there's a couple of
it's there. They made a DVD of that concert. So
Cool.
It's out there. And that, I mean, playing Bohemian Rhapsody every night, like, that was just stellar.
That's the whole...
So intense.
Too,
it was amazing. We were actually talking about that recently. We're like, what else can we do that's going to top that? What cover can we do that can just recreate that experience? Because it was just so awesome.
Few covers could be so interesting and so diverse, and when it's pulled off so well, that's... I don't know. I mean, that's still one of the best songs of all time.
Yeah,
so,
she nails it.
Yeah.
Just totally nails it. So...
It's so cool. Well... I think the next part of, as you know, of this is really to ask, like, you know, because especially because you're a seasoned veteran at this point, you know, like, of the stage, of the music industry, being raised in a musical household, you know, like, I'm curious if you have a life perspective to share with us and the listeners, you know, is there something that you could impart, you know, like, what keeps you inspired and motivated? Is there...
You know, I really think that for me, it's the urge to keep learning and to keep growing and to keep expanding what I do, because I feel like sometimes it's easy to get to a point where you get to a level where you're happy and you're doing great and you've reached all these goals, and you know, maybe you've reached goals that are more than you could have ever dreamed, and that's how I feel. And you get to a place where you get comfortable, and I want to know that I don't want to stop there. I want to keep going. And I think that that's one of the things that comes with, like, for instance, using a pick. Like, I'm playing with a pick now more than I was 10 years ago. That skill has come in so handy and has come in back around more than I ever thought it would. And I'm open to reopening that door and trying different things and trying different pedals and trying different techniques, different basses, different instruments. I'm playing upright a lot now, and I have been the last 10 years I've been using upright in big arena shows, and being willing to just say yes and try new things. I think that having an open-minded perspective is so important for what we do, and in life in general. I think we're so easily put in boxes and kept in boxes, and to be able to open that up and expand, I think, is important for us.
Yeah. One of my favorite yoga teachers, Baron Baptiste, he is quoted as one of his favorite, like, slogans is "Be a yes." Be a yes to your practice, like, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be yoga, right? But, like, be a yes to your your project, to your commitment to what it is, and as kind of, I relate it to that in a way for myself, since I spend so much time on the mat, more time on the mat than holding a guitar these days. But I like that, like being saying yes and being open to, what the next piece of growth is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Was there, because I know you've had like this kind of upper hand advantage. Like I know early on, like you've told me a few stories throughout the years of like interesting names that have given you bass lessons along the way. But was your father? Did he kind of give you the wisdom in the beginning, or was it kind of like here's some stuff and then?
In the beginning, Dad was not into me playing bass at all.
Oh.
When I
Hey, Dad.
when I told him that I wanted to play bass, he was just like, "Yeah, kid, whatever." And I would ask to borrow one of his basses to practice, and his response would basically be like, "Don't touch my shit, kid."
Yeah.
And he wasn't into the idea. I'm not really sure why. I'm sure there were a few reasons looking back now, but it wasn't until his best friend came over and gave me a bass lesson, Andy Johns, producer engineer. It wasn't until he came over and gave me a lesson that I actually started up, and I took to it like a fish to water. And Dad was like, "Oh, okay, I guess this is happening."
Okay.
And then he took me under his
Then
wing.
he was proud of you.
Then he taught me how to change strings and took me under his wing. But he wasn't into the idea at first, interestingly.
So there was Andy Johns, and then was John Entwistle one of the uncles that came by, or like?
Yeah, he did live down the street from us for a while in Hollywood, but on one family trip overseas to England, we stayed with him at his place in Morton on the Marsh, and he knew that I was starting to play bass at the time, and he's like, I'm learning. I heard you're learning how to play bass, so he basically opened up this huge closet full of just basses, like as far as the eye could see, and he's like, "Pick any one you want. It's yours for the week." And I was like, jaw dropped, and I picked Fender Precision because that's what I knew, and that's what Dad used, and that's what a lot of my my heroes used. So I just picked one of his basses, and he invited me into the studio and kind of took me around the shoulder and showed me around and said, "Check out my bass." And he had like his buzzard bass at the time, and like put it around my shoulders. He's like, "Look, even the eyes light up." And I was like, "Whoa, cool!"
That's so cool.
And that, I look back now, and having him do that for me, or treat me in that way, or at least make me feel included and invited, was so encouraging, because I was just a little shit kid. He didn't have to do that to his friend's daughter.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do that at all, and but he did, and he took time to make me feel included, and that was huge. And it's moments like those that matter so much, and I have him to thank for, as well as all these people, for where I am today. Just even if he didn't directly sit me down and say, "Here's the ABCs of bass," like having him include me as a bassist as part of the party was like, it meant so much.
Almost a greater feeling for the scenario, right? Because it's like, it's one thing for somebody to come and give you direction and go, "Oh, you're doing it wrong," or maybe do it this way, but just to open up the closet of basses and bring you into the room and say, "Oh, you're a bass player."
Yeah.
And to reinforce that you're a part of this team, you're part of this family.
Exactly.
Like I see that you're included,
And he encouraged me. Yeah, I mean, even to the point of like, I'm on holiday, and I had one of his basses for a few days to just knock around on. I didn't have, Dad didn't bring anything with him.
Right.
On vacation.
Sure.
So that was just really special. He didn't have to do any of it, but he did, and it meant the world to me.
Was John also one of the first memories of the B-15, or was that your dad? I remember you told me some story about the early, like, plugging into a B-15.
Oh yeah, that was my dad's. It was in our living room.
Oh, it was his. Okay.
Yeah, that was one of my earliest memories, because it would light up blue.
Right.
And I just remember being a little, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 or something like that, and just Dad in our living room. Dad had like a couple amps and his upright bass and a guitar and a couple basses, and I just always remember the blue light whenever he turned it on. That A, that Ampeg. So that's just like seared into my brain.
Yeah. All these years later, it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still use Ampeg.
Yeah. It's cool. And that was how we came to know each other.
Yep.
Through that. And I guess the other kind of question around the perspective on life too, or another thought is that because you've had kind of an upper hand in some ways, like coming from a creative family and coming from just like, yeah, even though it wasn't initially the very beginning, the dad was like, but I mean, has it always been like cherries and roses, or has there been some downturns? Has there been some kind of moments where you questioned this whole
Absolutely. I mean, music industry is not the easiest in the world.
You don't say.
Yeah, and I could guess maybe one of the reasons that Dad didn't feel so keen on me doing it is because he didn't want that for me. He didn't want to go through the struggles and trials and tribulations that he did. I mean, that was a big part of it, and my guess is maybe that's why he wasn't that into it. But you know, it's never always cherries and roses. I don't think anything is ever always, you know, like that. But with those bottoms, you really appreciate like the good times, right?
Right.
And there's no light without dark. So it's part of that whole cycle.
Totally.
I think. And there've definitely been times where I'm like, what am I doing with myself? What am I doing with my life? You know, I would just like audition after audition and nothing would happen, and it can be very discouraging. Any of the entertainment, you know, industry can be.
Right.
But there are moments when you meet people like the Pink Gang, or getting the Pink Egg or something like that, and meeting people that you're like, oh, okay, there are good parts of this. There are good people in the industry. There are beautiful moments. And that makes it all worth it.
Did you? So I think was the Mars Volta gig kind of like one of the first gigs that or was there?
That was, I'd been in like a ton of bands and played around town, but that was the first band that I'd actually toured with.
Right.
Because I was finally out of school. I finished college, and I started playing with those guys while I was finishing up my last year of school, and. I finished school, and then next thing I knew, by fall I was on the road.
And did you get to do very many tours? 'Cause I know that your dad passed away somewhere in that area, right?
Dad died 3 days into my first tour.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was in Georgia, and it was really a gnarly time, because it was like the whole reason that I was doing this, the whole reason like he gave me the gift of music, and finally I get my first tour, which is all I ever wanted to do, was tour like he did.
Sure.
And there's this flip side to that, and he's on his way out. So yeah, that was a challenge. So
did that stop you completely from progressing with that band? Or?
No, I kept going.
You kept going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a few more tours after that.
So you were able to tour a few times for Tremulent. Mm-hmm. And then you helped write for part of the Deloused?
Yeah.
Or was that just kind of in the making while you were?
No, there were a lot of demos that we'd done, and we did a lot of writing, and 3 of the songs that we we were on the Tremulent EP, and some of the other demos that we had is what ended up coming out on Deloused.
I see.
But yeah, I did North America, I did Europe, and I did Japan.
Wow.
With them, and then Coachella.
Wow. How was it working with Omar?
Oh my God, he's like my brother. So much fun working with him.
He's so talented.
Yeah, it was a really incredible time, because I had been in school up until that point, and you learn a bunch of rules in school. Mm-hmm. And then when I started playing with those guys, all those rules just went out the window, and I was like, hey, what about just what we're feeling and what we're downloading from the ether? Mm-hmm. And that experience playing with them was just like the most creatively liberating time that I've ever experienced. Yeah, it was amazing. I love working with him.
Some of my favorite music is those early, the Tremulent and Deloused. I like a lot of stuff through that whole catalog. Mm-hmm. But Deloused, like when that came out, I can't even say enough. Like it was interesting, because I picked up the CD the night before my band left on tour, and we're going to tour from Seattle, and I was immediately into it the first night, and I was like, oh man, I can't wait to show the guys. And the guys didn't really like it at first. They're like, what is this? Like, just stick with it. Mm-hmm. Like, because it's like somewhere in between Led Zeppelin meets Pink Floyd, but not either one of them. Right. You know? And after I made them shut their mouth and listen to it, it became the album for the tour. Yes. Like, everybody was just like, oh man, I can't wait. Oh, there's that part. You know, it's like there was was almost unlike anything that would really hurt.
I actually had a moment with Flea a few years ago, which was really cool. I went up to him and said hi, and he was like, I didn't change any of your parts.
Oh.
And I like, to me, that was like the most incredible compliment you could ever get.
Huge.
Right? Yeah.
Huge.
So I mean, he pretty much played everything how they were written.
Maybe he's one of the most recognized bass players on the planet.
Yeah.
Marcus Miller, and
it was huge.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, thanks to him.
Aw.
I appreciate that.
That's so super cool.
It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was like.
And that's early work. That's not like 15 years later, like you've been a season. I mean, you came out of school and you've been working hard, but that was early work of yours.
Yeah, that was my first like nose to the grind, working as part of a band. Like, this is my blood, sweat, and tears, and my everything. Everything went into that. Being with those guys, it was like you become a family. Like you live, eat, and breathe, sleep together. Well, not sleep together, but
sleep next to
maybe
each
share,
other.
like
sure.
a bench in the van.
Yeah. That makes things messy.
Yeah, exactly.
Not advised, friends out there.
Not at all. Don't do it.
Don't do it. No matter how tempting, just don't do it. And I guess another little add on, for perspective, part of it is do you have like any kind of like personal rules, like or was there anything that your dad or anybody passed along to you that kind of became kind of a kind of an underpinning law, like, of your life? Or
I remember one thing that Dad would say to me. He would say that less is more. And it really comes into play more often than not, interestingly, in a lot of ways, I think. I mean,
Sure.
He meant it musically, and as far as bass playing goes, but I think that can come across in a lot of situations.
Totally.
And there's such simple words, but they mean so much. Again, less is more, right? Like,
Well, this is an interesting thing. I was just at Generation X with Steve Vai and Yngwie Malmsteen and Tosin Abasi and all these guys. And it's the second year they're doing it, but the running joke there is because Yngwie is so on 12 all the time and hilarious, like, because he's seemingly very serious about so many things that seem trivial at times. But his thing is like, how can less be more? More is more, right? Because he's like an extravagant, wants to go over the top and go this. But I think that there's, for that personality, I can understand. They're taking a literal stance. But you and I, we do yoga, we meditate, we think about things a little bit differently. And I personally translate that as when less is more when there's more space, right? So there's less thing and more potentiality, maybe, like, and when that space is allowed, then it's more room for activities,
right,
so to speak.
Like, things don't need to be so long-winded all the time, or like, I think of the example of writing a text, or something. Like, for instance, like, how many long-winded texts does someone get when all you needed to say was like, "Thank you, I'll see you at 5," or something like that,
right?
And then it's just like, not that there's anything wrong with long-winded text, but like, sometimes you'll get a text from someone and like, you don't need, like, you understand people like try to like step over themselves and are trying to explain why they're late, or explain why they had to take their dog to the vet, and then their mom fell asleep, and then this happened, and then that happened, and it just can create for more of a crazy energy than, I don't know, than needs to be, like
justification when it's not necessary.
I mean, it's just an example. It's just a little example, just a small example, but it's something that I try to remember when, like, when I'm trying to like explain away something, and I'm like, this other person doesn't need to know that, I ran out of laundry soap, and then my alarm didn't go off, and
so
then
I
like
slept in, and,
whatever. I don't know.
The cat pooped on the carpet. I had to clean it. It's why I'm late. It's a silly example, but yeah, it translates obviously to all aspects of music, I think, but being a bass player and getting that information from your father, who was a legendary bass player that had been traveling the world in a different era, a different time. and being able to pull from his experience and just and in a way, that being the simple thing, what was also in itself, it was kind of meta to say less is more, and that be like
be understated,
to leave it that, and let you interpret it.
Yeah, right? Take what you will from that phrase. But it's a phrase that's come in handy for me, and many times, obviously musically for sure, and especially playing bass. I mean, there's times when it's easy to get really excited and you want to play like a bunch of cool stuff, and then sometimes it doesn't work.
They're like, that's great, Eva. How about you take about 13 notes out, and there's the first one, the third one, and that's it. We're good. You're like, and obviously you're like, oh, got it. I know that.
Got it.
I know that drill.
Yep.
Okay. And then oftentimes when you sink into that, you're like, oh man, this really makes the song. That's what we find oftentimes, especially in the pop world and in the music, where you have a lot of layered instruments, and you're trying to. They have to have their own space, right?
Everyone's got to have their own space. Yeah, everyone needs their own little area to work in. But I mean, it's interesting though when you do listen to a bass player like James Jamerson or something. For instance, is like he's very active. There's a lot going on there. Sure. So then you think like, what is that? Like, how does that work? Because that's totally the other side of the spectrum.
But he's kind of the boss. Like a bass player like that.
He's kind of the boss.
It's like when some of those bass players are just bosses, and like you can't. They're forces of nature, and they somehow find the way to like keep those primary notes in the places they need to be while embellishing in all the right. I don't know. I don't understand it either.
And not like stepping all over everybody.
Well, the song still feels okay. It doesn't feel like, oh, dude's wanking.
Yeah.
You're like, no. I mean, I would almost let him play a little more.
It's an incredible gift. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It's the other side of that spectrum.
Yeah.
I mean, for the rest of us.
Yeah. But I think the rest of us probably keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
And not to call any of us stupid, but keep it simple is kind of similar to.
There's a time and a place, I guess.
More, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last little part I like to impart or to ask of my guests is, do you have any music you're listening to right now, or do you have any artists that you can think of that you might be need to be shouted out, like might be not that well known?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's really weird. I'm listening to a lot of I've been really into harpsichord lately, so I've been listening to a lot of Baroque music.
That's cool. That's different. I wasn't expecting that, but okay.
I'm digging on a lot of Vivaldi right now, and love a good night with Chopin.
And what's the context you listen to? Is it like at home while you're or is it in headphones or? I do a lot. I've been doing a lot. I do a lot of painting when I'm home. Oh, okay.
So I like to paint to that, or
cool.
If I'm doing stuff around the house. That's my tranquil place.
Okay.
I've just been really holding place for that kind of music lately.
Cool. It sounds like a great time to be painting, listening to classical music.
Yeah,
and,
I love it.
Probably cozy at the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the dog.
With the doggies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doggies.
Make a cup of tea.
Yeah. After they get done with their acupuncture appointments.
Exactly.
And you too.
And me too. Yeah. Rotate our acupuncture appointments.
Little needle action.
Mm-hmm. It's helpful.
Yeah.
I believe in it.
Yeah.
I believe in the holistic approach.
Same.
It's helpful.
Same. It's helped me a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
Players Pick Podcast, number 4, Eva Gardner.
Ooh, ooh.
Ooh, ooh.
Players Pick Podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chris Johnson.